the most interesting report came from Shams Charania and Sam Amick at the website. And I find it fascinating that their sources are telling them that Daryl Morey is trying to hold out to try and get James Harden, essentially, from the Brooklyn Nets in a deal with Ben Simmons. And obviously that deal won't happen this year. Like there's just no way that the Brooklyn Nets are going to move James Harden at the deadline when Kyrie Irving's situation is so tenuous and Kevin Durant is out for the next theoretically potentially 4 weeks.
Mm-hmm.
And they really need Harden to like be there.
Score.
So yeah, I just I get that we're at a point where Daryl Morey wants James Harden, has worked with him extensively in the past. James Harden, you're not getting him this year when Joel Embiid is currently the best player in the NBA. Like there is no player who is playing better at this current moment in the NBA outside of maybe Giannis. And you're not getting James Harden for this season. You'd be acquiring him in the summer when you have to pay him a substantial amount of money because he has a player option for next season that he'll have to exercise or decline, and can sign an extension off of that player option, or can decline it and sign with a new team or do whatever. Right. So James Harden by August of this year will turn 33. Are we really gonna is Philadelphia really gonna mortgage Ben Simmons and its future for James Harden? Good as James Harden is, like I don't mean disrespect, but like the cracks are showing a little bit with Harden here. He's been really good over the course of the last, let's say 4, 5, 6 weeks, basically since he got back from his little sabbatical in mid-December. I believe he was on the COVID list. He's averaged like 26 points and 11 rebounds, but the efficiency is starting to wane a little bit. And he doesn't seem to be quite as effective as he's been in the past. I just don't love the idea of waiting for James Harden when you have Joel Embiid, who is this good right now. How do you feel about this, Penny? Like this whole thing is a bit weird to me.
Couple pieces to it. The first is, how long is the staring contest going to go on between Daryl Morey and Ben Simmons? And if you think, and most people do, and I agree with you, that Joel Embiid is playing the best basketball in the NBA right now, wouldn't you want to get the best asset next to him to kind of be the Batman to Robin? Whereas you have Robin sitting on the bench for half the year, and now you're going to do it the rest of the way. So how do you kind of navigate that space too? I know he's getting a little bit older, but if that's the best piece you can get back for Ben Simmons, do you pull the trigger on it when you can? I mean, Joel Embiid's not getting any younger either. Do you try to strike while the iron's hot? And because like, what other options are there out there? I found it also fascinating, like reading this morning, that James Harden didn't like the weather in Brooklyn, but like maybe Philadelphia would be different. It's like, hey man, it's all the same. It stinks. Like I hate to say it. And then where's kind of James Harden head at? Does he want to chase a ring here, like he kind of thought Brooklyn would be, and still could be at full strength, right? Does he want to go to Philadelphia and play next to Joel Embiid? Does he want to go back to the West Coast and just take 26 shots a night and be content averaging 34 points per game and back to his like really high usage, dribbling off the clock and shooting with 2 seconds every possession? I don't know. I can't crawl into his brain. So that's why it's hard to kind of figure out how this all works for all parties involved.
Yeah, and on top of that, like James Harden's contract that he would sign would exceed Ben Simmons's. So Philadelphia would have to attach other things onto Ben Simmons to acquire James Harden, like be it Seth Curry or something. But Seth Curry's not nothing. Like he's a valuable player. And again, like there's no way Brooklyn is doing this before the deadline. Like I'd be blown away if they did that, just given their situation. Like they are competing for a title. If I was Kevin Durant, I would have a meltdown if they traded James Harden before the deadline. So I can't imagine that they're going to do that. This would purely be an offseason move. So you're wasting what is the best season of Joel Embiid's prime, a player that, has dealt with injuries and is 7'2" and enormous, and we have concerns about his durability long term. I don't love the idea of them waiting for a 33-year-old James Harden as their savior to put next to Joel Embiid when, I mean, do we think that they win a title while navigating like how to play together in the first year? Probably not. So
Probably
you're
not.
moving to 34-year-old James Harden. I feel like the
Right.
timeline in the window gets too short if you go and get James Harden, essentially.
Then
And on top of that, you're wasting this year of Joel Embiid because they're not winning a title unless they do something with Ben Simmons. In my opinion,
absolutely.
as good as Joel Embiid is, they're probably not winning a title unless they do something. So
But what is the something? It has to, like, I'd rather have James Harden than nothing. I'd rather have James Harden than Ben Simmons sit on the bench where kind of keep on doing this dance forever. Like, who is the piece that's attainable that you think you could reasonably trade Ben Simmons for right now? If it's not James Harden, that's okay. But like, is Ben Simmons not going to play the whole year? Like, what's the Vegas odds on him being traded versus him continuing to sit?
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, Daryl Morey is I think sending out signals. Like when Daryl Morey says, "Hey, I really don't think I want to move Ben Simmons." As much as anything, I think he's kind of priming the fan base that they might take him past the deadline. I don't think that they necessarily would prefer that. Like I think they would love to get like a Godfather offer from the Sacramento Kings involving Tyrese Halliburton and Harrison Barnes and Buddy Hield, right? I think they'd love to get a Godfather offer from Atlanta, but if that offer doesn't come, I think Daryl Morey is like priming the fan base to say, look, we might keep this guy past the deadline. And I don't know. It's hard. Like I get where Daryl Morey comes from. I don't think he's wrong to value Ben Simmons as an elite asset in the NBA. I love Ben Simmons. Like I think he's awesome. It's just, it's a real, he's, kind of running a fine line here because Joel Embiid is so good right now. He's so good right now that I just can't imagine not going to get that guy help given his injury past and not knowing how this is going to go long term, essentially.
And then the other side of it, I actually would like Ben Simmons fit in Brooklyn. You don't want to score, you don't want to shoot in the games, great. Kevin Durant and Kyrie have no problem doing that for you. Like he's a good complementary piece that will still rise up the level of play too, defensively, moving the ball late, kind of be that positional mismatch on both sides of the court. That piece of it works. Now, does Harden work in Philadelphia? You're kind of selling out a little bit to what you're saying for right here, right now, and we don't really know long term or the next season or two what James Harden's going to look like.
Well, here's the other thing too that is weird about the James Harden Joel Embiid fit. James Harden loves to kind of pound the ball into the ground and loves to run ball screens, particularly. Like he needs a ball screen to be at his utmost effectiveness. This isn't to say Joel Embiid can't be a great ball screen partner with James Harden, but like that's not really what Joel Embiid does. Yeah. Like it's not his game really. Like he's a mid-post guy, he's a face-up guy, he's a post-up guy whenever he has a mismatch, right? Like I even don't love the schematic fit on the court. And it doesn't surprise me that Daryl Morey is going to would prefer to go down this route either, because in general, Daryl Morey has taken a, stars and minimums approach to roster building, right? Mm-hmm. Like he thinks that the biggest marginal inefficiencies in the NBA basically are the best players because there's a salary maximum that you can pay, and those best players drastically exceed what they are paid in terms of value. And then the minimum guys who you can sign and get reasonable, approximation of value for players that you're paying potentially $5 million. If you get those signings right, they just tend to be higher variance signings. So I understand what Daryl Morey and his philosophy is. I understand the idea. I just disagree with this one, I guess, is where I'm at. Like I really firmly disagree with him if he takes takes Ben Simmons into this offseason and then tries to move him for James Harden. And maybe he's leaking these things. Maybe people
Exactly.
around him are leaking
That was
these
my next point.
things.
How much of this smoke to drive up either the cost or drive up the panic from teams like maybe Sacramento or Atlanta to say, hey, we got to move fast because he's about to move somebody else to get another piece.
Yep.
Could be that. He's played chess this whole time, not checkers. So I wouldn't put it past him either if this is just kind of like the Citizens Bank past in the departed and trying to just throw everybody off of what he's actually planning to do. He's smart. He started the Sloan Sports Conference. This is not his first rodeo. So I think he knows deep down what the direction he's going to take.
I think it's that. And I think, again, like he might if they don't get an offer, he might take them into the offseason or take Ben into the offseason and might want to prime the fan base for that, because I cannot imagine that the Philadelphia fan base, long known for its rational,
being so understanding,
calmness,
booing
would
Santa
be
Claus.
would be super pleased if Ben Simmons is still on this roster come like February 15th or whatever. So we'll see.